Massachusetts is one of the most expensive states for raising a family. In fact, the average cost of childcare is more than double what the federal government considers affordable. But state lawmakers are hoping to change that with an ambitious new childcare bill that just passed the state Senate, which, among other things, would make more families eligible for subsidies. So how big a deal is this, and what are its chances in the House? I'm joined now by GBH News State House reporter Katie Lannan and Patty Sinclair, president of the Massachusetts Association for the Education of Young Children. Thank you both so much for being here. So, Katie, what is the deal with this bill? How would it change the landscape for childcare across the state?
So there's so many things in there. It kind of tries to touch on every piece of it, right? So from building the workforce to give them more support as they develop in their career, to boost their pay with the goal of keeping these workers in the early education field so that there are more seats for families. On the family end, it would expand subsidy eligibility, like you said, so more families would be eligible for state-subsidized childcare. And there's without getting too into this percentage of the federal poverty line or the state median income, it would cap some families' out-of-pocket costs, that families that are receiving subsidies, and the eligibility threshold would change pretty dramatically. Currently, I think about $73,000 annual income for a family of four. That would go up to $125,000. So it would make a wide swath of people more people eligible with plans to increase that if money is available in the future, additional money. And one of the things that a lot of people in the early education field are excited about is it would make these grants that the state started giving out early in the COVID pandemic to kind of help childcare providers weather that turmoil and keep their doors open. It would make those permanent, write them into state law so that they would keep flowing.
And how big of a factor was the pandemic in kind of illustrating some of these issues, Patty? I'm curious about why this is coming now and where we're at, kind of the scale of the need for this legislation.
Yeah, firstly, we certainly want to thank Senate President Spilka for bringing this forward. This is a momentous moment for us in the early childhood education field, and fully implementing this would be transformative. It would make Massachusetts more affordable for many families, greatly improving our state's economic competitiveness and increasing racial and gender equity in our communities. This is long overdue. This is something that we've been fighting for a really long time. And, during the pandemic, we really showed up. We were the workforce behind the workforce. And now folks in legislation are standing up for us, and we're feeling very grateful today.
What kind of issues do you think this bill is tackling? I'm wondering what the state is right now for folks working in childcare, some of the things that you've had to be dealing with in the last, I'm sure some of these are really long-standing, but also some things that were highlighted during COVID.
Yeah, the C3 operational grants have really been significant in terms of centers being able to stay afloat, to stay in business, and provide childcare for the workforce to get back to work for sure. And so, as mentioned previously, this would be more stable funding in order for centers to be able to stay open, family childcare centers, et cetera. And it would enable significant public investment to help meet really the true costs of providing high quality care. And that's really what we're trying to get to, so that we can have thriving environments for children, being able to really focus on hiring and retaining our staff. And once fully implemented, it would provide that stable source of funding to promote the delivery of higher quality care. It would lead to higher salaries for providers and expanding professional development opportunities. And it would result in really more potential employees reentering the workforce and benefits of talent recruitment, retention, and productivity. And this would make Massachusetts, significantly more affordable, greatly improving our economic competitiveness and dramatically increasing racial and gender equity.
Right. I wanted to talk about that price tag, right? There's no real formal price tag for how much this would cost. There's an estimated around $1.5 billion. Can we afford that as a state? Was that part of, you were there for the debate. Was that part of the pushback? What have folks been saying about that? So
I will say there hasn't really been notable pushback to this bill. It passed the Senate unanimously, but that is when you're talking about $1.5 billion or wherever a big investment like that ultimately lands, there are questions. So I don't think I do think it is a really popular idea to make the childcare system work better for everyone who touches it, to make it more affordable and accessible. But the question, as you suggest, Tori, is really going to come down to where do we find the room in the budget, especially at a time when tax revenues have not been meeting the expectations used to build the budget. We still have a strain placed on the state's coffers by the emergency shelter capacity situation. And there are just a lot of competing needs as you look throughout state government. We're talking about a state budget that numbers in the mid-50s, $58 billion is what Governor Healy is proposing to spend next year. There is, the new millionaire's tax on incomes over $1 million is a source of money for education and transportation needs. But look at all the needs within education. That money's been used for free school meals, for expanding opportunities in higher education. But all of which is to say, when the state government wants to fund something, they do try and find a way. When they passed K-12 school finance reform a few years ago, there wasn't a dedicated funding source attached to that. And it becomes a question for successive legislators. They might want to do it now, but it's whether they can keep paying those bills down the road.
Right. You mentioned during the debate, Senate Education Committee Chair Jason Lewis acknowledged that it would require substantial additional investments, even if they do decide that it's going to be 1.5 for now. And as Patty had mentioned, there's an argument to be made that we can't afford not to do this, right? Because there's an economic boon that it would come out of this. In your reporting, you mentioned the 2022 Max Taxpayers Association report. It found that individuals and families lose $1.7 billion per year from missing work or reducing hours associated with childcare, and employers lose $812 million in tax revenue from those lost wages. So ultimately is the idea that this would supplement the economy, spend money to make money kind of thing.
Yeah, I think it's one of the things Senate President Spilka has said is this is something we can't afford not to do. There are opportunity costs. I think, as Patty was saying, it is a workforce issue. It's being positioned that way because, if your kid is home and you can't find anyone to watch them during the day, how do you go to work? How do you pay income tax on that money? So that's, I think, one of the arguments that we're seeing from the bill's supporters is that there's a cost to not doing this, as well as a cost the state will have to bear if this ultimately becomes law.
Right. And Patty, maybe you can help explain this, but the way that childcare works across Massachusetts is that it's largely, predominantly private owned companies, right, that receive subsidies from the state. I mean, there's a blend of both kinds, but this would subsidize a lot of those workers and able to retain workers and hire new workers and help those childcare centers stay open so that they have spaces that are available for parents, right? Because a lot of it is that there's just not availability or time or the workforce.
Yeah. I mean, Massachusetts is lovely in that we have a mixed delivery model here in Massachusetts. And so we have a mix of private pay. We have a mix of family child care centers, some centers who have subsidies and some who don't. We really say that there's something for everybody in Massachusetts. And when it comes to child care, certainly recognizing nannies and doulas and all the folks who support young children. And I would just really echo and say that an upfront investment is necessary here. And we totally get that. But in order to achieve the system we envision for high quality childcare, we have to remember that over the long term, this investment in high quality early education and care, it pays for itself. And having a very high return on investment. I mean, some reports say between $4 and $16 per $1 investment. So by improving education and life outcomes for children, spending on high quality early education and care reduces the need for future government spending on special education, grade repetition, healthcare, incarceration, amongst other things, right? And so by improving workforce participation rates and earnings amongst parents and over the long term, children, investments in high quality early education and care, it also increases economic growth and additional tax revenue.
Right. So it's an investment in everyone at a very early level, essentially. Do you have a sense of where this is headed? Obviously, it's gone to the House now. These things take however long they take. If you care to speculate a little bit, do you have any kind of sense about the timeline for this?
So, I mean, I guess kind of a hard deadline would be if the House is going to do something on this, They would most likely need to get it done by July 31st when the formal legislative sessions end for the year. Beyond that, House leaders haven't really tipped their hand. We know that they say they're reviewing the bill that came over from the Senate. Speaker Mariano named childcare and early education as one of his priorities when the session began, specifically supporting the workforce. It's not clear really yet if that will be a policy package to answer the Senate, if that'll be more investments in the budget. I'm going to be watching later this week to see what he says to the Greater Boston Chamber of Commerce when he talks there Thursday, because about a year ago in a similar address, the speaker kind of put out a call to the business community that this is something the House is going to want help from the private sector on, because it is, like we've been talking about, a whole economy issue.
Right.
So we'll be looking to see if maybe some new details or even tea leaves to read come out then.
Great. Well, we'll keep us posted. Katie Lannan, Patty Sinclair, thank you both so much for being here.
Thank you, Tori.
Thanks.